Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Take a Stand. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and it's always my pleasure to be here with you guys. On this show, we talk about inspirational, motivational, and heartfelt stories and secrets for women who have beaten the odds to create success in their family, their business, and their life. And I am so excited today because I am joined today by my favorite publisher in the world, the amazing Linda Stirling. And if you don't already know a little bit about the book that we have just recently released called the She Myth book, or the She Myth, and it's about redefining a woman in business. Linda was so gracious in picking up our book and actually being our amazing publisher. And I cannot speak highly enough of the work and the support that Linda does as a publisher, and her business is called The Publishing Circle. So I asked Linda if she would mind being on the show with me today so we can talk about how Linda has in her career and in her life and also with her family, like really stood up, and she stands firm on what it is that she believes in, and now how she's actually standing out herself, but not only standing out herself, how she's helping other people stand out in this world of business. So welcome to the show, Linda. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. That's a lovely introduction, and I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely deserved. So I want to sort of go back a little bit, because nowadays Linda is an amazing publisher. She's very, renowned at what she does. She's very, very good at that. And the Publishing Circle has been an evolution of things over a period of time, right? So if we sort of take you back, Linda, to your teenage years, let's go back there and let's start thinking about what it was that you did way back when that maybe was some of the challenges, or we call them in the book, the she myths that you had to overcome to actually get to where you are today, how you navigated all of that.
Well, I might take you back even further than teenage years.
Okay.
There's an earmark for me at age 8. I knew two things. I knew I wanted to have children, and I knew I wanted to be an author. So I don't know why, but age 8, it was all there for me. And so I continued to carry that forward. Like you and I have talked about before, there were some interruptions in my path because I had a child at a very young age. I was only 17. And so I had to rethink how I was going to go about achieving the things that I wanted to achieve, and at the same time be a good mom. So that was the start of me looking at what are the other ways that I can accomplish things that are maybe non-traditional ways.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, you and I have talked about this a lot because, like you, I was a teen mum too, and I remember back sort of thinking about when that all was happening, right, all unfolding, and some of the thoughts that were going through my head at the time, but also some of the outside influences in terms of, like, I could only imagine, you having a dream at 8 years old, wanting to be a mum, which you're about to be, but also wanting to be an author. And at some point, did you ever voice that to the outside world? And then when you became pregnant, what was what were people saying? Was there a narrative that, hey, it's okay, Linda, even though, you're in this situation now, it's okay, you can still manage to do it? Or were there other stories being told?
There wasn't any encouragement. I grew up in a little town where that was an extremely shameful thing, and you were better off just not being seen. And that included at school, because I was still in high school, and the school did not want me there. They thought that I must be a bad influence and a horrible person. And so they did everything in their power to keep me out. Fortunately, I had an advocate at the school in the form of the school counselor, who I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but her husband happened to be an attorney. So maybe there was a little clout there that she used. But they finally acquiesced and allowed me to come back to school on a couple of conditions. So number one was I had to, in addition to doing all of the existing schoolwork, I needed to take correspondence courses from the University of Nebraska. And so these were college courses in addition to my high school load. So that was condition number one. Condition number two was I couldn't be in the classroom until after I'd had my baby. So I followed their rules because I was intent on graduating with my class. And it was pretty tough because I also was, I don't know, maybe stubborn enough. I also wanted to nurse my baby and, do all of those things that you want to do as a new mom. And so I was, practically flying to school and flying home, then back again. And it when I look back, I think, oh my goodness, woman, how did you manage all of that? But I did.
Well, it's interesting that you say, at that time there was not a lot of encouragement, and in fact, there were a lot of yes, you can have this, and yes, you can do all the things that everybody else can do, but there are multiple conditions that go with that. And what's great about it is obviously that stubbornness, and I'm totally relating to this story because it is. I was saying to Linda before we jumped on, I almost feel as though with the stories that Linda's told me, I almost feel as though I've run this parallel path with her. So I can totally resonate with what she's talking about. It reminds me of sort of my journey way back when. And lucky that there were, some people that were advocates that were ready to step up and really, be the voice, the voice of reason, I suppose. That was like, what's the big deal? Like, we can really help this young lady be able to continue with her education. So then moving on from that, Linda, so, you obviously being an extremely dedicated and determined young woman at this time, still having that dream of being an author, where did your life take you thereafter? Like, what was next?
Well, soon after, I had a couple more children. So I had 3 little kids, and very little engagement from their father, who then we ended up divorcing right after my 3rd child was born. So I still knew that, by golly, I was going to do the things that I wanted to do. I checked the list on the kids, I think. But I looked around at what would be an avenue to get into the work that I wanted to do. At the time, there weren't the kind of programs where you could get support going to college. So I knew I didn't have that opportunity open right away. So I thought, well, and remember, little town. So I thought, well, what's the closest thing to getting into media? Well, there was a radio station. And so I applied for a job at the radio station, and it was in sales, but I thought, well, I'm in the door. And that's what I always look at, is if I'm in the door, then I can look at what else I can do. So I began to write the copy for the news and ads and whatever I could write, just to get my hand in and see what was working. And I think writing that crisp copy paid off later in a lot of ways. But I did well there. And my goal was always to then get into newspaper. That was the next step of my goal. So I approached in a bigger town, the daily newspaper, and I knew I didn't have any writing credentials yet, but I could get in because I knew how to sell. So I got into the sales department, and then I did something there that I think, for a lot of women, being told we can't do something is maybe more powerful than somebody believing in us. So after I'd been there for a little bit, the woman who ran the advertising department, I approached her and I said, I really want to write for the newspaper, and I have an idea on what I could do for a business section. And I remember so well her laugh. And she said, "You can't do that. You haven't even finished college." And when she said, "You can't do that," I thought, well, by golly, I'm going to show you I can.
Watch me. Uh-huh.
So what I did was I put together what it's called a double truck in newspaper language, which is just, 2 facing pages. And I mocked that all up. I knew all the advertisers, so I knew they would be happy. And I just bypassed her and I went right into the publisher and said, I want to be the new business editor, and here's what it will look like. And I laid it out in front of him, and he looked at it and he said, "Well, you don't even know how to use our computers." And I said, "Well, if I learn by deadline, can I be the new business editor?" And he said yes. So
Wow.
that was the start of getting my name in print. And then, as you know, I went on from there. I've had 55 books published, and I've published a lot of other people and coached a lot of other people. So being told no, that I couldn't, worked pretty well.
Isn't that a really interesting? And I mean, I'm sure other women are out there listening to this and going, yeah, when we get told, no, it's almost like that, that naughty child comes out of you and says, well, you watch me, I'm going to figure out how, and I'll prove I'll prove you wrong. Isn't that interesting? Because often as women, when you get the yes, or someone says, I believe in you, or you're waiting for somebody to tap you on the shoulder, as opposed to if you get a no, it's almost like, well, let me at it. I'm gonna show you now. It's just a very a different sort of mindset, isn't it, in the way in which women approach things. So as you were going through your career, can you remember some times where maybe like that was an instance, obviously, where the woman sort of laughed at you and said, look, how are you going to do that? You haven't even got, a high school degree. How can you possibly?
Oh, I had the high school degree. She wanted me to have college.
Oh, a college degree.
Yeah.
So you don't even have that, because her thought was you've got to have that to be worthy and capable of being able to write, for that newspaper. And obviously you went on to completely prove them wrong. What are some of the things that because as time's gone on, so by this time you've 3 children in tow, how did you manage to really progress your career whilst also balancing family life?
Well, one of the things that I did was I took a lot of stuff home. I knew that I would have to work at home to accomplish as much as other people who, were maybe in a little different circumstances, but could do. So I took a lot of stuff home and spent a lot of late nights because, priority was always taking care of kids first and all the other things, the scout meetings, the baseball, on and on and on. And so it was just a matter of figuring out how to work other things into my schedule and being really fine-tuning every little piece that I needed so that there wasn't any wasted energy. And that still serves me well. A lot of people will say, I don't know how you get so much done. Well, it's because I've got a list and I work down my list and just am, dogged about finishing what I need to finish. And so I started that at a pretty young age.
So, I mean, that's, in terms of making sure, particularly in this entrepreneurship world, is that there are a lot of things kind of flying at you left, right, and center, and lots of things that you have to sort of balance and manage, and, family, and then your life being one of those things, right? It's not like you can compartmentalize like you just described there. It's kind of like all in one. I realized that I had to manage my home effectively and efficiently so that I could get as much as I done as I possibly could. But you're also realizing that there were certain things to get you ahead of your peers or other people that were in your industry, so that you could start to stand out, meant that you had to take some things home, and being able to blend all of that together to become super efficient and effective at what you were doing, whilst also being able to balance your family life. I think as we get older too, you think when you're young, you've just got your young children to have to deal with, and that's quite often the case. And then as we get a little bit older, you sort of end up having, children, grandchildren, plus also at times, elderly parents and other family members that also require our care. Nowadays, how do you manage to? Are those the same principles or the same techniques that you used way back when? Are they the same techniques that you use today, or have they evolved?
That's a really excellent question. I would say that they're pretty much the same. So a principle with me is always what am I dreaming next? What do I want to bring into being next? And from that newspaper, it was magazine, and then it was publishing. Having my own work was published by a traditional publisher, then getting my own publishing company. So for me, all along, I always have a plan. So what's that next thing that I'm excited about, that I dream about, that I want to bring to fruition? And I'm like that with everything that I do today. So there was consciously at those stages in my life was always like, I'll do my best job now, but I'm looking out here. I want to go further out and get some other things accomplished. And so by knowing what I wanted, then I could look for those opportunities that might come up, or make those opportunities come up. And so that's just been the way that I've operated pretty much from age 17 forward.
So in terms of that's when and you have clarity about where it is that you're going, and you're constantly dreaming about, well, what's the next thing, that enables you to know, well, what is the next step that I actually need to take. And I'm seeing that really clearly with what has unfolded in your life, going from, the radio, what do I need to do? How do I get my foot in the door? Go from the radio station to the newspaper to so on and so forth. For somebody else whom is, I'm thinking back to your 8-year-old, where you were saying, as an 8-year-old, I knew I wanted to be an author. But now, you've sort of taken that, dreamt that even further into now having your own, publishing house. Tell us about that transition that you made from, okay, so I'm writing books now I'm being published by others. What was that moment that said, do you know what? I want to actually publish books for other people. I want to create my own publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
Well, it came about because I saw how traditional publishing was working for myself. And then, of course, knowing so many other writers. And many years ago, I was president of a big writing organization. And I just heard so many complaints. And I knew with the first 7 books that I published, believe me, I didn't get rich on those. And not that you necessarily get rich on any book, which that's a whole other conversation. But the amount that I made based on the effort that I put in was so small. And so what I always do when I look at things is, well, what if it's different than that? How can it be different? So the first thing that I did was I wanted to be the kind of publisher that was approachable. When I had my first publishing company that was with a partner, the kind of publishing that's available now was just not in existence. You were straight traditional publishing. You got 10,000 books printed at a whack, and then hope that particular book was popular enough to sell and all of that. And that was still not where I wanted to go, but it was what was available at the time. And I knew I wanted to publish. So then that company, my partner's husband died. She didn't want to do the publishing anymore. I was invited to be the executive editor for another publishing company. I liked that. That company didn't hold together for very long. So then I thought, okay, I'm not seeing that anything is coming together quite the way I envisioned. But by that time, then, I had a span before I started this existing company because I got really sick and was doing some other things just to hold on. But I also published a bunch of additional books because self-publishing then became an option. And so I used that platform in 2008, I believe, is when it really opened up with Amazon so that people could publish. You didn't have to have a publisher. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to start publishing a bunch of other books while I'm not able to do as much. So I did that and then taught some classes, but people kept coming to me and saying, I know I can self-publish, but I don't know how to promote. Could you do the promotions for me? What they want to just write and be done with it. So that's really when I started spending a lot of time thinking, okay, if I'm going to form the kind of publishing company that I want, that's going to take me out through the rest of my lifetime, then it has to have certain parameters. So what are those parameters going to be? So I started establishing what those would be, and then looking at, well, how can I do this? Because I'm not a rich woman. And so I thought, okay, if we did a shared partnership between some of the writers, and then I did ongoing marketing, because the ongoing marketing, which is something nobody tells writers, that's not something that the big publishers do, or even the mid-list publishers. If a book does not just flourish right out of the gate, then they're done. And that is such a disservice to a book and to the author who's put, often a year or even two into writing the book. And so I knew that I had to have a way that I could work with the author, do the things that a publisher doesn't do, like communicate with their authors. When you have a traditional publisher, you're probably never going to talk with them. When you turn in your manuscript, you might hear from the house editor, or now they hire a lot of editors out of house. You might hear from them when they want something changed, but you're really not very involved. You don't have any say over the cover. If they want to change stuff, they can change stuff, and then they can drop your book, and they can pay you. If you're really, really, really lucky and have a long list of accomplishments, you'll get 10%. Most writers are getting 3%. I'm like, no, I don't like that for myself. It doesn't feel right. So one of the starting principles that I put into place was it's going to be a 25% royalty for my authors. I'll take 25%. And then I'm going to put 50 cents of every dollar that book earns back into marketing, and I'm going to do the marketing on a perpetual basis. So figuring all of that out took a lot longer than just spewing it out here, but looking at what wasn't working in traditional publishing, what I felt could work well for both the author and the publisher. The traditional publishers, they've been doing this for a long, long time. They know they can get away with doing things the way they have been, but it's not an author-friendly environment. And I just didn't really like that, being a writer myself. So I decided that I wanted to create the kind of publishing company I would want if I was approaching a publishing company again.
And I'm going to say, thank goodness you did, because I can say, we thoroughly enjoy working with you as our publisher, and it's a very, like, the way in which you've gone about like creating that business, I love. And from a list, what I want to, I suppose, get through to our listeners is that there's a real message in what you've just explained there. And often there are businesses sitting inside of your unhappiness with a particular service or way in which somebody is doing something. And often, just like you, Linda, you were capable of creating, writing books, then moving on to self-publishing, and then actually experiencing that from the other side, as in being the author, experiencing that level of service and all the things that you wished or you dreamed that, I wish that my publishing company would have this, and this, and then them not being able to deliver that. So then you going away and actually putting an entire business together based on all of the things that you wished your previous, publishers actually had. And I'd have to say that must have been holding you in good stead now, because like us, we're extremely happy, with their level of service and the attentiveness that we get from a publisher like you. And I know for sure that is not something we would have got elsewhere.
Well, I was delighted to be able to publish the book, and Vicki, who is the co-author, she'd actually worked with, I believe it was 5, if I'm not misspeaking there, different big publishers, and she said she would never work with anybody but me again. And so when this book came up, I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely interested. Yeah. I saw the preliminary manuscript, and it's like, yeah, I can get behind this. So it was a delight.
And you are absolutely right. Like when we had, just letting everybody know that this is actually the true story background. We were going to actually self-publish the book, and Vicki was like, no. We've got to, let me just have a chat with Linda, because if we're going to do this, and we're going to do this on a grand scale, and we truly want to be impactful, we need to get the right publisher behind us. I know exactly the person that we need to have on board with this. Let me chat with Linda, and the rest is history. And now Linda is our amazing publisher for the She-Myth book, and I would highly recommend her if you are thinking about writing a book and you need to get in touch with a publisher. You need to get in touch with Linda and at least have some form of preliminary conversation. So in the She-Myth book, like, I asked Linda to come here today because we gave her the manuscript and we asked her to read it and determine, because she doesn't take on just any old body, right, Linda? You need to make sure that it's in the right, it's in alignment with who you are as a person. Let's talk a little bit about that in terms of value. So if somebody wanted to work with you, because now you're really standing up for what you believe to be the way in which a publishing company should be built upon, with the customer, and the author at the center of all of that, and then really standing firm on what you believe to be true, and now starting to stand out, because the things that you are doing now really do make you stand out in that publishing world, because nobody else in that space is doing all of the things that you are doing, particularly when it comes to the marketing piece. So when somebody comes to you with a book, and let's just say it is like the She-Myth book, what sort of things are you looking for?
Well, there's 2 main things in my process. So the first thing is I have to really believe in the book. And I publish a wide variety of genres, but I want books that I feel good about, and I feel like as a publisher, I can make some money off them, and that the author can make some money. So that's my number 1 criteria. I have a second one that is different than other publishers, and that is that I always interview the author, because the way I look at it, the author and I are connected for the rest of the book's life, and that should be a long life. I want to be able to, get on a video call or pick up the phone with someone that I'm happy to talk to. So if I don't like the person, if I get a bad vibe, it doesn't matter what their book is like. It's a no-go. But the first thing is, it has to be a book that I believe in, because getting behind a book the way that I do, it is, I put so much more of my energy into every author, every book, than any publisher that I know. So if I'm like, I don't know, this is okay, then I'm not going to take it on. And I don't have to take on a lot of books. So it just has to resonate in those two ways.
Which I think for anybody in business, I think they are really good, places to start in terms of, do I actually like the project that I'm going to be working with? And do I want to wake up in the morning and actually spend some time with the person that I'm going to be working with? And when you start to build your business around those principles and start to build it in a way that you thoroughly enjoy, then it doesn't feel like work any longer. Like, I'm hoping that, when you chat with both Vicky and I, it's not like work. It's like, I feel as though we're part of a bigger team, that that we're become family, and that we're all in this together for the betterment of the readers, those people that are going to read our book and actually implement the things that we are talking about in it, so that they can, they're able to have a increased level of business discernment once they have completed reading the She-Myth book, but also feel like they've got a sense of who they are and what they're about, and that they haven't been alone, and that they can let a lot of the She-Myths go to allow them to move forward really confidently in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that was another thing about this book in particular, is I just felt like taking it on and working as closely as I have with you and Vicky to get it, out into the world. I felt like it was so much bigger than any of us. And that was a really, really good feeling. And that's what I like for all of my books. Even if there's something that's pure entertainment, I want it to be positive and doing something that I can feel good about myself, and have other people respect me for the kind of work that I put out.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for everything that you've been doing for us, and for for really supporting the book, because it is going out into the world, and the feedback that we've had has been phenomenal. So we're super excited about it, and like you say, that these books should have a long life, and that's exactly what we intend to do with it, and to start really making some ripples in the world. Look, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today on the Take a Stand show. The things that you have done in your life, Linda, are really inspiring and motivational, and I certainly look to you for the things that because, like I said right at the beginning of this, I feel as though I've sort of had this parallel life, even though we've been brought up in completely different different countries, by completely different people, all of that sort of thing, different cultures, etc. But it's really interesting and fascinating that that one person can have sort of the things go on in their life that another person can have too, and just by seeing that, you feel like you've got a sister in the process and through the journey. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing everything that you have today, because there are absolute gems inside of everything that you spoke about today, in terms of really dreaming big, thinking forward, getting clarity about what it is that you want in your life, then breaking those down into, well, what is the very next step that I need to take? You don't have to conquer the world all at once, but by taking one step at a time, thinking through where is it that I want to go, and and then really believing in yourself, and sometimes bypassing those that are maybe standing in the way, taking a slight detour to get to the goal that you were after, and now being the successful businesswoman that you are today, a loving grandmother, mother, and extremely supportive family member in your family. So thank you so much for everything that you do. We absolutely love you in our company, and we're so blessed that you are our publisher. So to everybody else that's listening today, I want you to take on board what Linda's been talking about. I want you to continue to listen to the Take a Stand show, because I'll be continually sharing, stories from successful women who've been successful not only in their business, in their family, but also, their life, because the stories that they tell will help you reshape the story that you continue to tell yourself well into the future, and will help you build the future of your dreams. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I certainly have. I always enjoy my conversations with Linda Stirling. And I want to let everybody know, Linda, where can they get more of you? Where can they find you if they've got a book inside of them, or they have a manuscript right now that they want to share with you? Where's the best place for them to contact you?
Well, they can certainly go to the website, which is just The Publishing Circle. But for anybody who's listening to your show, Tracy, if they want to shoot me an email, I'm always happy to get on a Zoom call. I'm just Linda at thepublishingcircle.com. Easy to find.
Beautiful, guys. Take her up on that, because that is not something that she gives out very freely. So the fact that she shared that on the Take a Stand show is really special, and that gives you, like she said, she talked about the door open. That was her opening the door to give you the opportunity to actually get your book and your stories actually published. So thank you so much for being here, Linda. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you again on another episode of Take a Stand. For now, make sure that you are standing up, standing firm, and standing out in whatever it is that your heart desires in this world of business and in life. Bye for now.